Mary, Queen of Scots, executed for what reason? You might want to get on the ride as we unfold history. Stay just right here. She was crowned queen at just 6 days old. She married a king, buried a husband under suspicious circumstances, and found herself locked in a castle, swapping clothes with a laundress to escape. But how did Mary, Queen of Scots, royal by birth, rebel by circumstance, end up on the executioner's block, her head severed in 3 brutal swings? Was she a tragic pawn in a Game of Thrones? A cunning conspirator plotting the downfall of her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I? Or simply a woman whose love life was so chaotic it made medieval Tinder look tame? What secrets did her letters hold? Why did so many plots swirl around her name? Ridolfi, Throckmorton, Parry, Babington, each more treacherous than the last. And what did Elizabeth really feel as she signed the death warrant of her own blood? This is not just history. It's espionage, betrayal, romance, and revenge, all wrapped in velvet gowns and whispered confessions. Stay with us as we unravel the scandalous saga of Mary, Queen of Scots, the queen who lost her crown, her freedom, and finally, her head. Mary was born on December 8, 1542 to King James V of Scotland and Marie de Guise. 6 days later, her father died, possibly of grief after losing a battle to the English, or maybe just a really bad case of medieval man flu. Either way, baby Mary inherited the Scottish crown before she could even hold her own head up. Scotland, being a bit short on pacifiers and monarchs, handed her over to a series of regents, including her formidable mother. Want to know how things unfold? At just 8 months old, Mary was betrothed to Prince Edward of England. The idea was to unite the 2 kingdoms in peace. Instead, it was like trying to calm a bar fight with a love letter. Scottish Catholics were outraged, and the match was called off. Henry VIII, never one to take rejection well, launched a campaign charmingly called the Rough Wooing. Spoiler, it involved burning towns, not bouquets. Now to the event we all want to know. To escape the chaos and strengthen ties with France, Mary was shipped off to the French court in 1548. There, she dazzled everyone, including King Henry VI, who called her the most perfect child he'd ever seen. Though, let's be honest, royal standards for perfect probably included not drooling on the throne. She married Francis, the French Dauphin, in 1558. A year later, he became King Francis II, making Mary Queen of France. But the honeymoon was short-lived. Francis died in 1560, leaving Mary a widow at 18 and fresh out of kingdoms. Mary returned to Scotland in 1561, a Catholic queen in a Protestant land. She tried to play nice, no religious purges, no papal parades. But her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I of England, wasn't buying it. Elizabeth refused to name Mary her successor, despite Mary having a stronger claim through their shared Tudor bloodline. But how would this happen? In 1565, Mary married her cousin Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley. At first, it seemed like a match made in heaven, or at least in a very politically strategic purgatory. But Darnley turned out to be a royal pain, arrogant, jealous, and about as useful as a chocolate teapot. Their marriage soured faster than ale in the sun. Then came the scandal of all scandals. In 1567, Darnley was found dead after a mysterious explosion at Kirkfield. But plot twist, his body wasn't blown up. It was found in a nearby orchard, apparently strangled or smothered. The prime suspect? James Hepburn, Earl of Bothwell, who just happened to be Mary's close companion at the time. Coincidence? The nobles didn't think so. Want to know how this event unfolded? With the nobles sharpening their swords and their insults, Bothwell fled like a disgraced contestant from The Bachelor, Royal Edition. He made it to Norway, then Denmark, where King Frederick II, clearly unimpressed by his resume, had him imprisoned. There, in a gloomy cell, Bothwell slowly lost his mind. No throne, no wife, no allies, just cold stone walls and regret. He died in solitary confinement in 1578, a tragic end for a man who once danced with queens and dabbled in regicide. Meanwhile, Mary was confined to Loch Leven Castle, which sounds romantic until you realize it was more dungeon than Disney. On July 24, 1567, she was forced to abdicate the throne to her infant son, James VI. Her half-brother, James Stuart, Earl of Moray, took over as regent, because nothing says family bonding like political betrayal. During her year-long imprisonment, Mary suffered a miscarriage, losing twins likely fathered by Bothwell. The cause remains unknown, but the emotional toll was immense. Her jailer, Sir William Douglas, kept a close eye on her, but his brother George Douglas had other plans. On March 25, 1568, Mary attempted a daring escape. She swapped clothes with a laundress, covered her face, and carried dirty linens to a waiting boat. It was almost the perfect plan, until one observant sailor noticed her suspiciously delicate hands, because apparently royal fingers don't scrub laundry. She was recaptured, and George Douglas and his cousin Willie were expelled. But in a move that HR departments everywhere would frown upon, Sir William later rehired Willie. And wouldn't you know it, on May 2, 1568, Willie stole the key from a drunken Sir William and helped Mary escape for real. Mary reunited with over 6,000 supporters, nobles, churchmen, and commoners ready to fight for their queen. On May 13, 1568, they clashed with Protestant forces led by her half-brother Moray at the Battle of Langside. It was less a battle and more a royal beatdown. Mary's army was routed in under an hour. After Langside, Mary fled south, hoping to reach France and the protection of her former mother-in-law, Catherine de' Medici. But the French court wasn't exactly rolling out the red carpet. So Mary turned to her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I of England. On May 16, 1568, Mary crossed into England. Catherine de' Medici even wrote to Elizabeth, urging her to treat Mary kindly. Elizabeth responded with a royal shrug and a prison cell. Mary's presence in England was like storing gunpowder next to a fireplace. As a Catholic with a claim to the English throne, she was a magnet for conspiracies. The Ridolfi plot of 1571 was the juiciest, a plan involving King Philip II of Spain, the Pope, and a cast of Catholic conspirators aiming to assassinate Elizabeth and crown Mary. Elizabeth's spymaster, Sir Francis Walsingham, was basically the Tudor version of James Bond. He sniffed out plots like a bloodhound in a cathedral. Mary denied involvement, but the whispers never stopped to fore. Fast forward to 1583. Enter Francis Throckmorton, a Catholic gentleman with a flair for drama and a Rolodex full of exiled English Catholics. He cooked up a plan to enlist France and Spain to invade England, overthrow Elizabeth, and crown Mary. The plot was so convoluted, it could have been written by a caffeinated octopus. Unfortunately for Francis, Elizabeth's secretary Sir Francis Walsingham was basically the Tudor version of Sherlock Holmes. He sniffed out the plot, arrested Throckmorton, and extracted enough confessions to make a confessional booth blush. Throckmorton was executed in 1584, but once again, Mary's direct involvement couldn't be proven. She remained under watch, her reputation growing darker than her prison cell. Next up, William Parry, a government agent who was also, plot twist, a double agent. In 1585, Parry was accused of plotting to kill Elizabeth and replace her with Mary. The plan was so poorly executed, it might as well have been drawn in crayon. Parry was arrested, tried, and executed, and Mary's name was once again whispered in the halls of power, though no solid evidence linked her to the scheme. By now, Elizabeth's patience was thinner than a Tudor rough in a rainstorm. In 1584, the Privy Council passed the Bond of Association, a document that basically said, if anyone tries to kill the Queen, we'll not only take out the assassin, we'll also eliminate the person they were working for. Ironically, Mary signed it. Oops. Then in 1585, Parliament passed the Act for the Queen's Safety, which declared that any successor involved in a plot against Elizabeth would be stripped of their claim. These laws were tailor-made to corner Mary like a pawn in a very dangerous game of royal chess. In 1586, the Babington plot emerged, Mary's last and most fatal entanglement. Anthony Babington, a devout Catholic with a flair for encrypted letters and bad decisions, wrote to Mary about a plan to assassinate Elizabeth. He had 6 men ready to do the deed and wanted Mary's blessing. Mary, perhaps bored of embroidery and eager for action, wrote back on July 17th, suggesting the assassins might indeed be necessary and asking to meet them. Unfortunately, Walsingham had been intercepting her letters the whole time. It was the Tudor equivalent of reading someone's texts while they typed. Babington and his crew were arrested and executed in September 1586. With the smoking quill in hand, Walsingham finally had the evidence to prosecute Mary. Mary's trial began in October 1586. At first, she refused to attend, arguing that Elizabeth wasn't her sovereign and English laws didn't apply to her. A bold move, but about as effective as yelling diplomatic immunity at a firing squad. She eventually appeared, defended herself with dignity, and was found guilty of treason. It was, as they say, worth a shot. On February 8, 1587, hundreds gathered at Fotheringhay Castle to witness the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots. She dressed in black, wore a veil, and carried herself with the grace of someone who knew history was watching. The executioner, perhaps nervous or just really bad at his job, needed 3 swings to sever her head. When it was finally done, he held it aloft and cried, "God save Queen Elizabeth. May all the enemies of the true evangel thus perish." The crowd gasped. The world watched. And history wept. Mary's death was not the end of her story. It was the beginning of her legend. Her life inspired countless works of fiction, operas, films, and debates. She was a queen who loved too boldly, trusted too recklessly, and schemed too dangerously. And though her head may have rolled, her legacy stands tall. If you've been gripped by the scandal, seduced by the secrets, and stunned by the swing of the axe, don't let this be the end of your royal binge. Follow us for more tales that history tried to bury. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss a twist in the timeline, and hit that notification bell like it's a Tudor plot, because every time we drop a new